always thought stress was just a part of life. Something you just deal with like a traffic jam, taxes, or in-laws. I never thought it could kill you. Not really. But that was before I found out what happens when you ignore it for 100 days straight. My name is Ethan Marks. I'm 42, a husband, a father of two, and a mid-level manager at a growing tech firm in Austin, Texas. Life was busy. It always is. You wake up, you check emails before you even brush your teeth, you juggle meetings with school pickups, you skip lunch but never skip caffeine. You smile for the team and cry on the drive home. That's just the grind, right? On day one, I wouldn't have said I was stressed. I would have said I was handling it. My company was launching a new product, and I was leading the team. Deadlines loomed like thunderclouds, but I told myself I worked best under pressure. At home, my wife Jessica was asking for more help with the kids, and I promised her I'd catch up this weekend. But the weekend never came. By day 5, my eye started twitching. Just a little flutter like a muscle spasm. I laughed it off. By day 8, I was waking up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, convinced I'd missed something. An email, a report, a meeting. I hadn't, but my body didn't care. By day 12, I was living on coffee and adrenaline. Meals were whatever I could grab between Zoom calls, protein bars, stale muffins, or nothing. I hadn't seen the inside of a gym in 2 months. I told myself I'd get back on track when things slowed down. But they never did. On day 17, Jessica sat me down after the kids went to bed. "You haven't looked at me in a week," she said, her voice calm but edged with pain. "You're here, but you're not here." "I'm just tired," I lied. "It's this launch. Just a few more weeks." She nodded, but the light in her eyes dimmed. I think part of her stopped believing me that night. Day 20 hit hard. I was in the middle of a meeting when my chest started to ache. Not sharp, but tight, like someone was sitting on me. I broke into a sweat. My vision blurred for a second. I excused myself, walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and told myself it was nothing. "Anxiety," I muttered. "It's just anxiety." But anxiety isn't just anything. It's a warning signal, a fire alarm. And I had 80 more days of ignoring it. By day 21, I started keeping painkillers in my desk drawer. My headaches were no longer occasional. They were daily, like clockwork, usually setting in around mid-afternoon. My assistant noticed me rubbing my temples and asked if I was okay. I smiled, told her I just needed new glasses. I was lying. I lied a lot in those days. By day 23, I stopped sleeping altogether. I'd fall asleep at 1 or 2 a.m., only to wake up 2 hours later, drenched in sweat and convinced I was late or behind on something. My dreams, when I had them, were filled with alarms, deadlines, and people shouting my name. My doctor prescribed sleeping pills. I didn't take them. "I can handle this on my own," I told myself. I didn't want to depend on medication. That decision would cost me. By day 25, I began forgetting things. Small things at first, passwords, names, the point of a conversation. But then I missed an important client call. My team had been prepping for it for weeks. I spaced it completely. My boss called me into his office. "Ethan, what's going on?" he asked. He looked genuinely concerned. I said I'd just been distracted, maybe a little under the weather. He nodded slowly. "All right, but this can't keep happening." I walked out of his office and straight to the bathroom. I threw up, not from illness, but from shame and fear. That was the first panic attack I ever had. I didn't recognize it at the time. At home, things were worse. Jessica had stopped asking me to help. She just stopped talking much altogether. The kids tiptoed around me like I was made of glass. My daughter, Ava, 9 years old, left a drawing on my pillow one night. It was me, asleep at a desk, with the words, "We miss you," Daddy written in purple crayon. I cried silently in the bathroom for 20 minutes after that. On day 30, I started having digestive issues, constant bloating, random nausea, and cramps that came out of nowhere. I thought maybe it was the food, but my diet was mostly caffeine, carbs, and stress. It wasn't the food. It was my gut reacting to the cortisol constantly flooding my system. Day 34. I had dark circles under my eyes. My skin broke out like I was a teenager again, and my hands were starting to tremble when I typed. I began to avoid mirrors. I didn't recognize the man in them anymore. Then day 39 happened. I was driving home and suddenly forgot where I was going. Completely. I was in the middle of a familiar route, but it felt foreign. My heart pounded, my palms were slick, and I pulled over, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me anchored to the earth. That was when I realized something was very, very wrong. But I still didn't stop. Because by day 40, I was too deep in it to even see a way out. I told myself this was just a phase, that it would pass, that I just needed to be strong a little longer. But stress doesn't pass when you ignore it. It mutates. It grows fangs. And mine was just getting started. By day 41, my body felt like a house with too many broken windows. Nothing catastrophic had happened yet, but the wind was howling through the cracks, and I could feel the walls shaking. I started getting chest pain more often. Not sharp like a heart attack, but dull and constant. Like someone had wrapped a belt around my ribcage and slowly tightened it. My breathing was shallow. I get winded just walking up the stairs. My Apple Watch started nudging me. Your heart rate is elevated while resting. I turned off the notifications. By day 43, I was snapping at people. My fuse was gone. One of my team members submitted a report with a minor formatting issue, and I chewed her out in front of everyone. Her eyes welled up, and she didn't say a word. I felt terrible, but I didn't apologize. Couldn't. My pride had become a cage I couldn't step out of. That night, Jessica and I fought. Not like before. This time it was real. Final. Explosive. You are not the man I married, she said, standing in the kitchen with tears streaming down her face. You're not even present anymore. You're a shell. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, jaw clenched, vibrating with a rage I didn't understand. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I poured another coffee and went back to my laptop. By day 48, I had ulcers. My doctor confirmed it after I finally went in for the stomach pain. He asked about my stress levels. I laughed out loud. It's just work. I said. That he didn't laugh. He leaned forward and said, Ethan, you're headed for something serious. You need to slow down before your body forces you to. I nodded. I promised I'd take it easy. I didn't. On day 52, I forgot my son's soccer game. It wasn't just that I didn't show up. I didn't even remember it was happening until Jessica sent a picture from the field. Our son was standing in his jersey, looking right at the camera with this disappointed little smile, like he wanted to believe I'd show up. I stared at that photo for 10 full minutes. Then I threw my phone across the room. Day 55. My blood pressure was dangerously high. I could feel it in my temples. My vision would blur when I stood up too fast. I developed tinnitus, a constant ringing in my ears like my body was trying to scream at me when my brain wouldn't listen. And then came day 59. I was giving a presentation to the executive board. Midway through a sentence, the words just disappeared. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. I couldn't remember the next slide. I couldn't remember what I was even talking about. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. Sweat soaked through my shirt. My knees buckled. I blacked out in front of the entire room. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor, my team hovering above me, someone pressing a cold compress to my forehead. I mumbled that I was fine, just dehydrated, I said. But they all knew. I wasn't fine, not even close. On day 60, I didn't go to work. Not because I chose rest, because I couldn't get out of bed. My limbs felt like they were made of stone. My mind was fogged over. I laid there staring at the ceiling, unable to move. Not asleep, not awake, just hollow. Jessica walked in and sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't say anything. She just took my hand. That was the first time I whispered the truth. I think something's wrong with me. Day 61 began in silence. I didn't go to work. I didn't answer emails. I didn't even touch my phone. I laid in bed while the world moved on without me. For the first time, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just tired. I wasn't just burned out. I was sick. And not the kind you recover from with a good night's sleep. I managed to drag myself to my doctor that afternoon. He ran tests. Blood pressure still dangerously high. Cortisol levels through the roof. Heart rate erratic. My body was screaming from the inside out. He didn't sugarcoat it. "Ethan," he said, "you're in what we call adrenal fatigue. You've overloaded your stress response system. Your body is shutting down non-essential functions just to survive." Survive. That word hit me like a truck. I wasn't living anymore. I was surviving. By day 65, I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Lena Ramirez. She had kind eyes and a calm presence. And when she asked me why I came in, I cried. Not sniffles. Not tears. Full-on, chest-heaving sobs. I hadn't cried like that since my father's funeral 10 years earlier. In our first session, she explained what chronic stress does to the body. The brain doesn't distinguish between a looming deadline and a predator, she said. It stays in fight or flight mode, day after day. Eventually, that constant alertness rewires you. And that's what had happened to me. I couldn't calm down even when I wanted to. My brain was stuck in a panic loop. Sleep? Gone. Joy? Gone. Even hunger was gone. My body didn't trust me anymore. Day 68 was a turning point. Jessica made a decision, one I didn't expect. "We need to leave," she said. "Just a weekend. Me, you, and the kids. No phones. No work." Part of me wanted to argue. The other part, the part that had stared into the abyss, knew she was right. So we went. We drove to a quiet cabin in the Texas Hill Country. No reception. No deadlines. No screens. On day 70, something happened I hadn't felt in months. I laughed. We were roasting marshmallows, and my son dropped his into the fire, yelled, "It's a lava bomb," and dove for cover. The kids laughed so hard they couldn't breathe, and I joined them, not out of obligation, but because I felt it. I had forgotten what that felt like. To be present, to feel light, even for a second. Back home on day 73, I made some hard choices. I went on medical leave. I delegated my work. I turned off all notifications on my phone. I started meditating even though I felt ridiculous at first. I walked every morning, no earbuds, just air and silence. By day 76, the headaches had eased. The gut pain had lessened. I was still tired. God, I was tired, but I wasn't crashing anymore. I was recovering. Jessica started smiling again. We sat on the porch after the kids went to bed and talked. Really talked. Not about logistics or schedules. About dreams. About fear. About how close we came to losing everything. Not just my health, but us. On day 79, Ava handed me another drawing. This time it was the four of us on a hike, all holding hands. "You're back," she said, and I almost cried again. Day 80 was quiet, peaceful. I sat outside sipping herbal tea, herbal, who am I? And watched the sun rise. I still had a long way to go, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was walking towards something instead of running from everything. But I wasn't out of the woods yet, because the damage stress leaves behind doesn't vanish overnight. And day 81 would show me that some wounds take more than a weekend getaway to heal. Day 81 was when the illusion of quick recovery shattered that I had been feeling better, lighter, calmer, even optimistic. But that morning, I walked into the kitchen and forgot why I was there. Again. Then I poured orange juice into my coffee. Jessica gave me a look, not judging, just concerned. That's when it hit me. Recovery wasn't a straight line. Stress had carved pathways into my brain, and those grooves weren't going to disappear in a few restful days. I was healing, yes, but I was also changed. At therapy that afternoon, Dr. Ramirez explained something I'd never considered. Chronic stress doesn't just hurt your body, it rewires how you think. Your brain learns to live in a crisis loop. Even when the danger passes, it still expects the next hit. That's why my memory was still foggy. That's why I sometimes felt panicked without knowing why. My body had spent 100 days in survival mode. It didn't know how to feel safe. By day 85. I had started journaling. Nothing fancy, just a few lines each morning. What I felt, what I needed. One morning I wrote, I miss who I was before this, but I'm starting to respect who I'm becoming. And I meant it. Jessica and I started walking every evening after dinner. No phones, no rush, just footsteps and conversation. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. And that silence, once so terrifying, felt like peace. At work, they kept my position open. I was grateful, but I also realized I couldn't go back to that version of my job or that version of me. When I did return, it would be with boundaries. No more answering emails at midnight. No more skipping lunch. No more pretending I was fine. Day 90 came with a surprising twist. My doctor called to say my labs were finally showing improvement. Blood pressure stabilizing, cortisol lower, sleep patterns improving. You're not there yet, he said, but you're heading in the right direction. He paused, then added, you got lucky, Ethan. A lot of people don't stop in time. That night, I sat with those words. A lot of people don't stop in time. What if I hadn't? What if I'd ignored the panic attacks, the memory lapses, the chest pain? What if I had blacked out while driving instead of in a boardroom? It wasn't drama. It was reality. And I had danced with death. Slow, silent, stress-induced death. And barely slipped away to be day 95. I was seeing life through a new lens. The simple things, watching a movie with my kids, holding Jessica's hand, cooking breakfast without checking my phone. Felt rich in a way they hadn't before. That I was still tired. I still had rough days, but I was showing up for my life again. On day 99, I gave a speech. My company had invited me to speak at a leadership wellness retreat. Ironic, right? I told them everything. The blackouts, the breakdown, the drawing from my daughter, the diagnosis I ignored, the price I almost paid. I ended with this. If you think ignoring stress makes you stronger, let me be living proof. It doesn't. It just makes you quieter as you fall apart. And I saw people crying, nodding, whispering to each other. Because it wasn't just my story, it was ours. Too many people living quietly on the edge of collapse. Day 100. It wasn't a finish line. It wasn't a miracle day. It was just another day. But I greeted it with open eyes, a clear breath, and a quiet gratitude. I hugged my kids. I made breakfast with Jessica. I journaled. I survived. And now, I'm learning to live. Stress stole 100 days from me, but it also gave me something I never expected. A second chance. Not to go back to who I was, but to become someone new. Someone present. Someone balanced. Someone alive.